To further expand on some of the core challenges that South Africa still faces, as of course in regards to the protection and encouragement of whistleblowers to come forward, we have roped in Mr. John Clarke, who is an advocate for whistleblowers in the country. John, great having you with us today. Good afternoon to you. So 3 years since the brutal assassination of Babita, what we understand is that the culprits are behind bars, but we are still not yet privy as to who the mastermind actually was, the person or persons that ordered this hit. So what would you like to say to this, especially to her still grieving family that is, I suppose, today still struggling to find some closure?
Well, Alicia, I feel almost a bit choked up thinking what her family was going through, having, counseled a lot of people going through tragedy and grief. And all I would want to say to them is that she wasn't really a whistleblower. She was a conscientious, committed civil servant doing her job. It wasn't that she went externally to make a public disclosure. She simply did her job. But the fact that this has happened has meant that her death has been a catalyst for a resurgence in civil society in South Africa to hold government accountable and to not let their feet away from the fire to make sure that accountability is brought to those who were the masterminds, who are in political positions, senior officials in the civil service. There needs to be the people not just suspended and put endlessly drawing a salary whilst we wait for further inquiries. They need to bring closure to those things. We need to hold people accountable, not out of any sense of vengeance, but out of a sense to deter that sort of conduct and behavior. Why have we not had that? Well, it's because if it were not for the media, for people like yourselves and all the others, I think particularly of Jeff Wicks. Now, Jeff Wicks was the News 24 journalist who took up the case to make sure that Babita's death was not in vain, and without having any statutory powers and the things like that which the SIU have, he did an extraordinary job to go and make sure that the SIU now can basically boastfully tell us that they're now busy proceeding with further prosecutions. And, Advocate Mutembe was actually saying on news this morning just how confident they were that they were now making progress. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for journalists, civil society, committed people like yourselves. Last point I wanted to quickly make is that this morning Professor van der Heever made the very interesting point that that she was not a whistleblower. And just to elaborate on that, increasingly I'm finding myself and my services sought by people who don't identify as whistleblowers. They're not, activists who have suddenly picked up some great big scandal. They are ordinary people doing their job and are suffering devastating retaliation for them. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's recently the investigators at Fort Hare University and the scandal there, where we are seeing the wholesale abuse of the legal process and by the police, who have now swept down on the forensic investigators, Sarah Berger and Bradley Conradi, arrested them, put them in prison, kept them there for, in Bradley's case, 2 weeks, Sarah's case, 6 days, without a bail hearing. Now, even if they were guilty, that's unconstitutional. I've been referred to another person who was involved there who for 3 weeks, her life has to be put on hold. She's fearful of leaving her home, all because she was privileged to having a lot of knowledge about how deep level the corruption was going there. But instead of them protecting her and supporting her, they imprisoned her and made her a co-accused as a way of discrediting them as witnesses. John, now that's what's still happening.
John, I mean, on that issue of protection, the long issue of South African whistleblowers or witnesses being subjected to endless threats, as you've just mentioned, as well as major risks should they come forward in crucial cases, is quite a serious concern, right? But one would hope with the new administration, as well as police minister, that such issues are then accorded the necessary attention by the relevant authorities. Let's dissect those common issues that often lead to witnesses or even whistleblowers not coming forward, and how then you think these can be addressed so as to prioritize their protection, as you earlier mentioned.
Well, I mean, we've got a new parliament, a new government, a government of supposed national unity. I actually think that people use the wrong sort of grammar there. They should be talk about governance for national unity, not a government of national unity. Governance for national unity. What would that look like? Governance that unites people so that we can, with the sense of security and safety, that they are not going to be victims of crime and that they're not going to be retaliated against. As whistleblowers, number one priority, overhaul the Protected Disclosures Amendment Act. It's wholly unfit for purpose, far too bureaucratic and laborious. It can be used, and I've got clients who are using it as best they can, but it's just so long and tedious. And we can't rely on civil society and voluntary people like myself. It's not sustainable to do it. The state has to come to the party.
Absolutely.
And Songezo Zibi, before the elections, I met with him and a couple of other whistleblowers, and he said he was going to propose that if he got into parliament, which he has, he was going to mount a private member's motion and obtain 1 million signatures of the public to get the government to prioritize the overhaul of the Protected Disclosures Act. So, Songezo, if you're listening, if any of your supporters are, there's a very good idea. And I don't think it'd be difficult for him to get those 1 million signatures, because it will also be an indicator to this government that the number one priority, because it undergirds everything else. If we want economic development, if we want all those sorts of things that need to happen, if we want to clean up the mafia and the construction industry, whistleblowing is the obvious way to go, and making sure that they're protected, because that will then make us sure we get to the problem as much more quickly as possible. Absolutely. It also explains why it's taking so long, because those networks of criminal syndicates have already got themselves well entrenched, and they are looking to tactically and strategically find ways of kicking the can down the road of delaying any legislative reform. But I do believe we're in a good space. I do trust that the new Minister of Police is is really committed. I've been impressed with him. So let's all hope that he will be able to show something. But the NPA, the Hawks, the SIU, I can't think of a more important priority.
Absolutely. A very quick one, John. We're almost out of time. I mean, what other initiatives are you currently engaged with in order to take the advocacy for the protection of whistleblowers further? And how can we as citizens also be part of this move? I know you mentioned, as you advocated there, for some of the personal engagements that you've had with certain people. And of course, what do you have on your table? What can we jump on the bandwagon of?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I feel a bit ashamed that what I've had to do is go outside of South Africa to get support for some of the whistleblower clients that I've been supporting, to get them funding, to help them pay their lawyers and all the rest. But I do believe there are sufficient resources, and it doesn't take a hang of a lot of money. It just takes lawyers that are willing to do things pro bono. But then we do now have the Whistleblower House, and I just want to give a shout out for Cynthia Stimple and what she does in that, because that really does gives us a channel to channel our efforts. They are overwhelmed with requests and demands. We need to have also people, like me, who are kind of into our kind of retirement years, or should be, who can come out with and participate and support us in ways of helping ensure that we provide support for people, also to help grapple with because it's not everybody that comes forward claiming to be a whistleblower is one.
Yeah.
And we need to have processes to ensure that there's a proper due process to ensure that that veracity is established, and that people at the same time, not to make them feel judged, but to make sure that we have a wisdom about it all. We need a bit like, King Solomon. He had this ability to actually discern the deeper problems.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, John. I could chat to you for the rest of this hour, but I still have a bulletin to get through. Thank you so much for that. I suppose worth mentioning is, of course, that last year, October, there was a Whistleblowers Award ceremony there that also honored Babita Deokaran as well as Marumo Pena there. That was Mr. John Clarke, advocate for whistleblowers on the 3rd year since the assassination of whistleblower Babita Deokaran.